What in the hell just happened? Coast to Coast podcast here from InsideCarolina.com. I'm Joey Powell, brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt. And we're recording this Sunday night, March the 27th. The Tar Heels just put away the St. Peter's Peacocks to advance to the Final freaking Four. Coast to Coast podcast here. We are so glad that you have joined us. Happy to be doing this show. Happy to be talking about another Tar Heel win. Sean Moran, Sherrell McMillan. I have no idea what's going on other than to think that in February, the Tar Heels just were probably in the locker room singing, "It's only a test that you're going through," but they didn't. Like, I don't know that they were singing that. This is what it feels like. Tar Heels, not just Sweet 16, as we talked about last week, now Final freaking Four. Sean, how you feeling?
I'm doing another week. I'm doing fantastic. This today, Sunday, was a little different than Friday night, but still, I mean, it's, an amazing accomplishment, especially, going through all these podcasts and talking about the games. I mean, I think maybe best of best case scenarios, but I know we were all just hoping, a huge win would be them getting through the opening weekend. And here we are talking about them going to the Final Four, which is crazy to say.
It is absolutely insane. And by the way, if you're not following Sean on Twitter, at Sean Mo Hoops, SEANMO Hoops, follow the man on Twitter, get some insight. You can find a way to connect with Sean outside of this pod.
There might be just a few reverse jinxes going on this week. We'll see.
Hey, look, you do what you got to do. Go where you go. Do what you do. Sherrell McMillan, how you feeling?
Good. You got my spirits up. I started singing "I Got a Testimony."
So look, bring it, man.
Shouts to Reverend Clay Evans.
Absolutely,
man. I'm good.
Look, man, you've had a big weekend, big 5 birthday for your little girl. Swung her through Chapel Hill, let her see the goodness, and now we've got a podcast of an extended season to discuss. So I am thankful that you guys are here. Special shout out to Johnny T-Shirt for sponsoring this. Before we even talk about Johnny T-Shirt, I want to let you know that as you're listening to this right now, wherever you're getting this, however you're consuming it, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, go to johnnytshirt.com. They have the Final Four locker room T-shirt available for pre-order. If you're listening to the show, you're likely a potential purchaser of said shirt. Make it happen. Support Johnny T-Shirt. Premium subscribers get that extra 10% off. Go do it. Make it happen now. Guys, Friday night at approximately late 30, the Tar Heels beat UCLA 73-66. First thing I want to talk about is how spot on our man Sean Moran was with his analysis of that game. Sherrell, how spot on was Sean?
He's pretty much spot on from Hawkways on down. He nailed the roster pretty well.
So Sean, I want to give you a shout out there. And then tonight, Tar Heels 69-49 in a game that, as much as Tar Heel fans and Inside Carolina subscribers may have been stressed in the second half, was never in doubt. 69-49 over St. Peter's. Just an improbable matchup to begin with, which, if you think about this Tar Heel team, the fact that they were being considered by the CBS broadcast crew to be the Goliath against the St. Peter's David is a little bit of a head scratcher, but hey, you do the narrative you want to do. Guys, I want to start here. 49 points is what the Tar Heels held the St. Peter's Peacocks to. If you look at how they played against UCLA down the stretch, they held the Bruins to an absolutely terrible field goal shooting percentage and also was really getting them away from their comfort zone. Sean, has North Carolina become a defensive team over the course of the last 6 games?
Well, they've definitely improved defensively against St. Peter's. That, by points per possession, that was their 4th best game on the year. And then from UCLA perspective, UCLA was hitting some crazy tough shots in the first half, but they only scored, I think, 10 to 12 points in the final 10 minutes of the game. So UNC was able to shut them down. I mean, for St. Peter's, we always talk about offensive rating. They only have one guy over 100. Doug Edert was at 39, 38, something like that. And I think, once again, that goes in large part to what we talked about last week after the Baylor game. Leaky has stepped up and is playing at a high level, but it's also, the guards, they're locked in. They're playing well defensively. If they get beat, there is help. I think the one thing we have seen when Armando isn't getting dragged out, he has been kind of that rim protector that the team has needed and been looking for. And, Brady Manek has been playing well, sliding his feet, rebounding the ball. So they've all been playing, as one fist, and they've been playing very well together.
Sherrell, Sean mentioned Leaky Black. Are there enough words to describe the level to which he has ascended and how much he has amplified his singular defensive game basically since March started for the Tar Heels?
There's some words. We will try to use some of them now. I think when you look at these really great Carolina teams that have made runs in the past, there's always that guy who, and it varies by position. Sometimes it's the point guard, sometimes it's a wing, sometimes it's a big, but there's always that guy who you can count on defensively to bring it every night. It's not saying that all the other players don't, but just this person on that particular team is just excels at defense. Derek Feltz. You start talking about him back in 1993. Really, to some degree, Rasheed Wallace. Back in those Final Four teams, because it was very difficult to get to the rim with him. In the middle, and the list goes on and on. And I think Leaky has kind of cemented himself as that guy. For this particular team, now a Final Four team, which is still hard to believe. Still,
by the end of the show, you will be used to saying it. It's okay.
Yeah,
That's my goal.
Yeah. So I mean, he's in that category now of defensive stoppers who completely erase, the some of the best players on the other team. I think what's different about Leaky is that the way basketball has changed. Derek, great guy, friend of the program, but he mostly guarded ones and twos.
Mm-hmm.
Rasheed, great guy, not necessarily friend of the program, but he mostly guarded fives, the occasional four.
Help side rim protector.
Help side rim protector. Leaky is on the perimeter and he's guarded everything from, the guy at Ellis at Louisville to Paolo Banchero. I mean, he's literally guarded everything 1 through 4, and at times he's guarded 5. So I think his versatility was different. People talked about Jackie Manuel, who's on the staff, and the relationship they have. I'm sure that's been a huge piece of it, as Jackie has that experience of being the defensive stopper on a team. But what Leaky is doing, man, it really is phenomenal. And I think we talk about how Brady Manek and how his passing ability and how his unselfishness has kind of permeated throughout the team. I think Leaky's defense has done the same thing. I think they see him battling and they see how hard he works. And I think you can't help but that but to feel that it's contagious. So I really think that that's been a key for UNC, because we've said it time and time again. There's really not been a Carolina team that's championship level that didn't at some point lock down defensively. And we've seen them start to do that over the last, I guess now 6 weeks.
Yeah, and I would challenge the folks that are listening to this show to think about, as much as you implicitly trust, Caleb when he's taking deep shots, but he's in his bag, or if you think about how much you trust Brady Manek taking an open three, you likely trust Leaky Black to shut people down now. And just having that sort of guy on the perimeter is just, like you said, Sherrell, it's an absolute difference maker for this team, because it allows the other guys to focus on what their job is, not worry about somebody going nuts. Talking about defense, Sean, Hubert Davis said earlier this year that he wished he could cut Leaky in half. And I think he may have tipped his hand a little bit, because what we've seen him do now is move Leaky on some different guys. You saw him in the UCLA game start out against Johnny Juzang. Then you saw in the second half, he moved over a little bit, was on Jaime Jaquez. Can you give some insight as to maybe what that does to an offensive player when you get used to somebody guarding you, then all of a sudden here comes the blanket?
I'm sure it's not an enjoyable feeling. I mean, I think for UCLA, you had Juzang hit a few shots early on, but I mean, I think he kind of realized, hey, I'm not going to be able to get by him. I might be able to face up and I'm going to take a contested shot. And if I hit it, I hit it. But then Hubert Jaquez, who probably thought he could use his height. But I mean, I think you've seen him guarding, you saw him guard Eater today, and he could barely get a shot off just due to that size and that length. And then, you've had the taller players that have tried to outmuscle him. And I think, he's been in the weight room his time at Carolina, so he's been able to get stronger. But right now, I think he's been just super solid in terms of being locked in, using that wingspan. We've talked about it before. I think being a lot more aggressive on both sides of the ball, starting with that home Virginia Tech game. And once again, sure, he's going to get beat. Everybody does, but to kind of really have that glove, which allows everybody else to kind of focus on what they need to do, has been a huge plus.
And I would add too, Joey, people got to realize the physical fatigue that playing defense, puts on your body. So I think it's a lot easier to play defense than it is offense, because in offense, you know where you're going. A defense, it's all reaction, it's all movement, it's all feet, and then acknowledging the scouting report and knowing trends. So it is a perfect match of kind of mental approach and a high basketball IQ along with physical ability. And to do that for 39, 38, 40 minutes a game is really incredible, not just from just, he held Juzang or Hawkwez to 1 of 12, but also just a feat of like physical achievement to be able to do that and do it as well as he does. So I think that should be highlighted as well.
And I maybe I misheard you, but definitely harder to play defense than it is to play offense.
Yeah. In my opinion, yeah, for sure.
Yes,
yeah,
I absolutely agree. Sherrell, I want to stay here on the defensive side of things, because again, I see this as one of the biggest aha things that have popped up, and the reasons for this Tar Heel team success. If you think about how bad they were on defense against Tennessee and how they could not stop anything Kentucky wanted to do, the fact that it's the same guys in the same locker room in the same jerseys that are now defensively becoming reliable is just insane. So Sherrell, I'm going to stay here. Can you shed some light on how Armando Bacot's ability and development as a rim protector has become another component that makes his Tar Heel defense more reliable?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I wasn't quite as down on him as a shot blocker entering the season. Is what certainly wasn't his number one skill, but you go back to the Oregon game in his freshman year, and he was blocking everything. And, he got hurt off after that. And then he really didn't, have many great games, especially as far as blocks are concerned the rest of the season. You go to his sophomore year, and there's a lot of times where he was playing the 4 with a true 5. So he was out on the perimeter. He didn't really have the ability to just kind of hang around the rim and block shots. This year, there's no question who the only and true 5 is on the roster. And so because of that, with the more minutes, he's able really to just kind of camp out in the lane. There haven't been teams who have been great about taking him out of the paint. And so when he can just hang around in there, it's not, I don't want to say it's not difficult, but he's worked on, and it seems like he's developed that timing that all really good shot blockers have, to make sure he's not fouling, and then using his length and his size and his athleticism to get to the shot. So I think it's kind of a 3-year progression. He's had the skills, but I think this year he's been put in the best position to get those blocks.
And again, like, these are all developments that I think, independent of anything else, are probably not a big deal. But when you see that they've all come together to make this really beautiful burgoo, it's quite a thing to look at. I want to talk a little bit about some of Hubert Davis's in-game adjustments. We talked about this, Tommy Ashley and I did, on Inside Carolina Live on Saturday, but I think that might be getting overlooked and will continue to be overlooked as we talk about a Final Four that has serious blue bloods, but coaching royalty in Kay and Self and Jay Wright. But Hubert Davis's little tweaks and his in-game adjustments have been amazing. Not only well timed, but I think they've been almost kryptonite for the other team's best players. Sean, I want to go back to Friday against UCLA. Look at what he did in the second half and making those tweaks to going more side screen for Armando Bacot, making the changes in how he was defending Juzang and how he was defending Hawkwez. Look at the results that came from that. And then I look at tonight, the way RJ Davis was playing the ball handler's right hand very heavily to not allow St. Peter's to get into their high screen action, because St. Peter's sets a ton of screens too. So can you speak to that and what you've seen as to how Hubert Davis is making some in-game modifications in addition to running a brand new system that seems to be giving this Tar Heel team just a great recipe for success.
Yeah, I mean, I think and there was a great article on Saturday morning on Inside Carolina from Trevor, who broke a lot of that video down, and you saw in the first half, we've talked about it of teams using basically a safety off of Leaky Black at times, and Cronin and UCLA kind of took it even further, really just planting him in the lane, which made it difficult to get Armando the ball, and it was difficult for the guards. All of a sudden, you open the second half, and it looks like the floodgates have opened for Caleb Love to use his size and strength to attack the basket, and not even attack, but to get pretty good looks right at the basket, which I think got his confidence going, and then in turn got him going from one of the greatest second halves in recent memory in a Carolina uniform. But in terms of the adjustments, I mean, you notice Hubert on the sideline a lot of the times, calling out the play sets or calling out what he wants. And we've seen it, whether it was in the regular season, getting Kerwin Walton an open three on the right wing, or getting Caleb in space, or putting Brady in the corner. So when you have all these threats, it obviously helps, but he's been able to kind of put them in the right spots, and also know what has been working in that game to kind of feed the hot hand or take advantage. Today it was like making sure Armando is getting the ball down low. That was something Purdue did at the end with Travion Williams, and it looked like they were about to, St. Peter's was about to be cooked, but they didn't do it enough, or they didn't focus on it until too late. So I think the game plan, both first half and second halves, have been super strong, and then the in-game adjustments have been fantastic to watch or read about if you don't realize they're going on, which can often be the case.
Yeah, those breakdowns by Trevor Marks are well worth a premium subscription. I mean, he really dives into it. It is the IC basketball's version of Jason Staples, and I learn a lot every time I read him.
Yeah, Trevor is a junkie's junkie, and I would echo what you guys have said. If anybody listening to this show has not followed Trevor on social media or does not look at the stuff he posts regularly for Inside Carolina, man, you are missing something. Sherrell, I want to get into some of the psychological stuff here, and it's not as glamorous or as sexy as a lot of folks would want to talk about. But I think early in the year, people couldn't really embrace, or maybe didn't understand. I want to try to give people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe didn't understand what Hubert Davis's approach was, because if you heard a lot of his responses and a lot of his press conferences, he was speaking very much in emotional, psychological, and spiritual terms in how he was motivating his team and how he was coaching his team. And I think that frustrated a lot of fans that weren't used to it. They were very much used to the matter of factness that you got from Roy Williams. Hubert is matter of fact as well, but I think he's approaching these guys on a totally different plane, and probably will too, because I think that's going to be his style. He just connects with guys emotionally as humans. How do you feel like that is paying off right now for these guys? I mean, we see that it is paying off, but what I'd like you to do is kind of maybe help folks understand how it's come to this payoff.
Well, I'll give you an example. There's a player who isn't playing much on the team, and I've been talking to people around him just because it's getting towards the end of the season, and the answer I got was not what I expected. When I was like, well, how are you doing? How are things? And this person was basically like, all in, Carolina first. This season hasn't gone, quite the way that maybe that person wanted it to, but, they love Coach Davis, and the positivity that he has really kept them engaged. And despite them, not playing a ton of minutes, they're still excited. And so I think when you have that, I think that says that he's gotten buy-in, and, it takes a while for that stuff to happen. I think that is the lesson for all of us, is that time is really one of the most important things, because you can't mold a program as rich and as historic as UNC in your own image in 7 games or 9 games or 11 games or 30 games. Mm-hmm. It's just not going to happen. And because of the talent coming back from last year, and because, he was Hubert Davis, he was Roy Williams's, kind of selected choice. I think everyone expected it to kind of just click over and be Roy Williams, 2.3 or whatever moving forward. And He's not. I mean, there are a lot of similarities because obviously he learned from Coach Williams, but I don't think it's dissimilar from Roy Williams and Coach Smith. There are a lot of similarities between those two, but Roy, decided to do things in his own way to put his stamp on North Carolina, and the positivity and some of the things he said, they're what this particular team needed when they needed it, and I think more than anything, they needed somebody to say, "I believe in you." And that's very simple. It's not a complicated message, but just hearing it over and over and over, it emboldens you to play well. It emboldens you to work harder, to do the things, to buy in. So I think psychologically, it is very much, to use a football thing, it's like running the ball. Like you just keep running the ball and you keep running the ball, and you know what movie I'm gonna go to, but you keep running the ball, and eventually you're gonna break through. And I think that's what Hubert Davis has done with his positivity. Not saying that he's just doing it to get a result, but because that's who he is. Eventually, it broke the wall down with the team. You started to see buy-in, and then the buy-in led to the great results that they've seen on the court. And now, again, still can't believe I'm saying it. They're in the Final Four.
Well, if you would have called any sort of backside George reverse there, I've gone in with you because I know where you were going. I like your analysis and talking about how time is so important, right? You can't microwave a Delmonico steak. And I think that that's kind of what we're seeing right now. And man, present company included, it's really, really, I don't know. It takes your words away to try to look at where this team was after some really bad losses early in the year, and now look at how things have come along with Hubert Davis planting the seeds and trying to actually, tend to them normally to let these guys grow and flourish. And it's crazy to see it on the court. Sean, what do you think having guys who have reduced anxiety and kind of mental freedom, how does that manifest itself in teams' offenses? Because I think that's what we're seeing right now.
I mean, I think, it goes to just, some of what we're talking about, confidence. The coaching staff has showed extreme amount of confidence in the players, and also with how the offense flows. There's a lot of, obviously Hubert and the coaching staff are calling a lot of plays and putting them in the position, but confidence is such a big aspect of this game. And right now, I think everybody, it feels, once again, it goes to kind of finding your role and figuring out what you're best at. And I think that probably took a little while, earlier in the year when we were kind of like wondering what's their identity. But I think when you're having confidence, then it just allows, you to move a little quicker, or to make that extra pass because, your teammate can hit the shot. I mean, I found myself saying nice pass, numerous times throughout the games lately versus earlier in the year. It would be a Brady pass on the wing or down low, and it didn't really come from anybody else. But now, it's been Caleb multiple times a game, or RJ, still Manek, Leaky, Armando, etc. I think that just, once again, confidence is such a huge thing, and so important for where everybody is right now.
Sherrell, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I was just looking back because I was trying to find a quote, and we're talking about the positivity and the confidence. Mm-hmm. November 23rd, 2021, UNC had a lackluster performance against UNC Asheville. Ended up winning by, I think, 19. 2 days after, they were destroyed by Tennessee.
I was there. It was not a pretty game.
It was not a pretty game. After the game, Hubert Davis says, I don't care what anyone says, I believe this team has a chance to win a national championship. And there is no one, I don't care who you are, if you say you believe that, you're lying. There is no one outside of that locker room, probably only a couple of people in that locker room, who believed those words at that time. And just the fact that he has been saying that for so long, like I said, it eventually wears you down. The positivity, you get worn down from okay, well, maybe I am pretty good at basketball, even though, I shot 1 for 19 last game. Maybe I am pretty good, even though I didn't move my feet and, I got called for a blocking foul. Maybe I am pretty good, even though I missed that box out. And I think that stuff, over time, it impacts how you play. Like, to Sean's point, confidence is a huge part of basketball. We've seen great players, great players at Carolina lose their confidence and not play well. And then they get their confidence back. And you're like, what happened to this guy? Nothing changed about how they shot the ball. Nothing changed about how they boxed out or how they dribbled. They just believe they can do it. And Hubert Davis has given his team like belief in spades.
That's the Jedi mind trick, right? And I will fully confess, I was one of those where when he was making those comments, I kind of gave a full, shout out to the Rock people's eyebrow, because it just, none of it made sense at the time. You were hearing him say this, and then you were seeing different things on the court. And, again, reminder to fans and folks who are listening to the show, he knows better than any of us. He knows these guys better than any of us. Sherrell, when you talk about confidence, I don't know that Tar Heel fans have seen a more confident display than what Caleb Love did in the second half against UCLA. Unconscious, flamethrower, out of his mind. All of the cliches have been thrown about. But I want to make sure we don't lose in the sight of his 27 points in the second half against UCLA. He was also making plays against St. Peter's that were not big shots. He made big shots, yes, but he was also finding cutters on the baseline. He was also driving and getting defenders to collapse on him to leave the ball off for somebody else. That seems like a guy we know Caleb Love has always been confident, but that seems like a guy right now that is absolutely just a man of steel. He's beyond Superman at this point. You've had some conversations with Caleb's dad, and you kind of talk to them back and forth. Can you give us some insight as to how Caleb went from a confident player to where he is right now?
A lot of that comes from his family. He loves his parents, his sister, his dad. But he's a confident kid. I mean, I think because he's put in a lot of work, and that gets I think lost a little bit in all this because of his high school ranking. People assume that this is just his talent finally catching up, when really he found an issue that he had last season. One of them being turnovers, the other being kind of putrid shooting from three, and said, I'm going to attack this all off season and get better. And I mean, the numbers are so much higher than they were in specifically those two categories alone. That shows you, that he puts in the work. I think the other thing is that him and his dad have a great relationship, and they do a lot of film watching and talking to Dennis, and he won't mind if I share this, but before, I guess after they beat Baylor and UCLA won, he kind of said, been watching a lot of UCLA tape, and I think Caleb's got a matchup there that he can take advantage of. And I was like, oh, why do you say that? And he, went through and talked about the basketball answers, and they made sense. And I think he made his first three from the left wing, didn't make another shot in the first half. I think he was 1 of 8 or 1 of 9 or something like that in the first half. But what happened, to your point, Joey, he saw that, and this was an adjustment by Hubert Davis as well that Trevor talked about. Once he started going towards the rim, it's just like everything opened up for him. That was, I think Greg Barnes mentioned it, one of his best games as far as getting to the rim and finishing at the rim, probably in his UNC career, because he did it over and over. And once he got 2 or 3 of those, I think that's when the light bulb went off and kind of the AAU Caleb came back, because that emboldened him to just, start hitting those threes. And then once they hit the threes, they started to crowd him, and then he started going by guys. And again, momentum can, once it gets going, it's hard to stop. So I think that's part of it. And then he's talked about this too. He's used the Calm app for the last year and a half to help him kind of meditate before games and relax before games. And so I texted his dad, and I asked him before the UCLA game. This is probably about 7:30. I said, how you feeling? How's Caleb feeling? And he said, extremely relaxed. And I thought, that could bode well for UNC. Didn't see a 27-point second half coming, but yeah, it was a great performance. And it's weird, Joey, because I feel like we keep saying, this was the first time, or this is the best in UNC history, or this has never happened before. But you start looking at all the things, like beating Coach K and Cameron in his last game. I think the first time 2 teammates have had 30-point games in the NCAA tournament. Manek was 2 points away from that. RJ Davis had the second most assists in the NCAA tournament game. Bacot has the most rebounds through 4 NCAA tournament games. Caleb Love has the most threes through 4 games by a UNC player. Bacot has tied for the most rebounds in a single game in UNC history. It's just like Love and Manek have shared the record with Marcus Page. Love's done it twice with 6 threes in an NCAA tournament game. That's a school record. So just all these records being broken over the last 2 weeks. I mean, it's so weird that how things flipped. And that's the beauty of sports, is that you're never out until you're out. And Carolina has taken this second chance that they got, and really, as Coach Smith would say, built their momentum in the tournament. You can't. I don't think you can really overstate the importance of how they got out against Marquette, because that gave them the confidence that they could play with Baylor. They survived Baylor, and that gave them the confidence that they could survive UCLA. And then today was more about kind of finishing the job on this first 4-game tournament. So Coach Smith, as always, is right. You build your momentum in the tournament. I think Carolina showed that this year.
And we have said on this show ad nauseum, I was talking to my neighbor about this after the game Friday. We have said on the show ad nauseum, this team finds a different way to get a game result every night. Like, I don't think, we've made the joke about Carolina football offline about how Carolina football has the same script 1,000 times. This basketball team is the polar opposite. They have had different results and a different way to get to said results more times than I can count. And when you think about things that are more numerous than you can count, naturally that takes you to the inventory selection of Johnny T-shirt, right? I mean, Johnny T-shirt is going to have.
That was elite, Joey. That was elite.
That was elite. Look, this
was elite.
This is tournament time segue right here. Okay, I've officially lost. I've officially lost most of my analysts on this show, but we've talked about Johnny T-shirts locker room tees that they've got available for pre-order right now. Sean, come back. Let's go. Johnny T-shirt is going to have that and much more. My daughter's soccer season, because you all care, my daughter's soccer season started back up this past weekend. Johnny T-shirt has the throwbacks to UNC women's soccer greats, gold medalists. They have those jerseys. Yes. They've got, I think it's Lily and Ham and Heather O'Reilly, big fan of hers. But you can go get those at Johnny T-shirt. What don't they have, right? I've said it 1,000 times. If Johnny T-shirt doesn't have it, you don't need it. Hit Johnny T-shirt up. Go visit them on Franklin Street. Look, you're in a celebratory mood. You want to go to Chapel Hill for no reason. Go to Chapel Hill right now. If you're going to be in Chapel Hill when the team arrives, then you need to swing by Johnny T-shirt. If they're not open when the team arrives, then you wait until Johnny T-shirt opens and you go get your gear. JohnnyT-shirt.com. Hit them up on East Franklin Street. Premium subscribers get the extra 10% off. We are big fans of theirs. They support the content that Inside Carolina puts out. And my segues to Johnny T-shirt ads are only secondary to their level of selection and merchandise that they have. Johnny T-shirt, we love them. We'll let the national guys drop some ads in here for a second. We'll be right back to continue talking about, still shaking my head, this Tar Heel team going to the Final Four in New Orleans. Stick around. All right, we're back. Coast to Coast podcast still coming at you. I'm Joey Powell, Sean Moran, Sherrell McMillan, still with us, still giving you the kind of the cut up of this past weekend. Friday night, 73-66 win over UCLA, and what was a very different game than what you saw the Tar Heels play against Baylor. And then 69-49 over St. Peter's. We've talked about the defensive side of things. We've talked about some of the psyche. I now want to kind of look at where this team can go from here. I don't want to do Final Four previews. We're going to do that later in the week. Inside Carolina is going to have all of the content you can stomach and then some. So make sure you stay locked in. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Matter of fact, just hammer the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting this content sent directly to your device. But we'll have plenty of time to talk about the Final Four preview here. But Sherrell, I want to talk about specifically where can these guys continue to go. You talked about guys growing momentum and building their own momentum in the course of a tournament. Give me one guy that you think probably still has a little bit more before he hits his ceiling and what that skill set might be. And Sean, I'm going to ask you the same question. So whatever Sherrell says, pick a different player and a different skill set.
I'll still probably go with Armando Bacot, honestly. I mean, he has dominated on the glass, but I think offensively, there have been times where he's missed some easy ones, some bunnies, and I think he'll probably get that cleaned up. He'll have a full week of rest to get ready to go against the ACC's Defensive Player of the Year and others. So I think I'm looking at him because he played really well. Offensively, I would say there was I mean, he's played well offensively the entire season. Don't get me wrong, but you did start to see a little bit of a dip there towards the end of the season. I think he got worn down some from playing so many minutes and getting double and sometimes triple team. So I think a reconcerted effort to get him the ball on the post and in the places that he likes can open things up even more for UNC's offense. And I think he'll be able to finish at a higher clip with some rest and with renewed energy after this regional final win.
Two things. Share your rest stat about this Tar Heel team.
So they're undefeated with 5 days of rest. They're now 7-0 when they've had 5 or more days of rest. And they are also undefeated when they have 1 day's rest. So, for instance, a Saturday, Monday during the season, or there was a stretch where they had Saturday, Monday, Wednesday. They won all 3 of those. So undefeated in those 2 situations.
Noteworthy. I also want to point out when you said Armando Bacot going against the Defensive Player of the Year, you were talking about the Associated Press and the conference's named Defensive Player of the Year, which is not Leaky Black. Okay, I appreciate that. Sean, who would you like to say probably still has more to give or has a little more room between even where they're performing and their ceiling?
Well, I'm gonna go a few different places with this one. First, not going to take Armando. Sherrell talked about him, but for him, free throw shooting. Last 3 games, he's been under 50% from the line, and points in the Final Four. You need to get them when you can. So that's the only thing for Armando. But I'm going to go with the guards and the wing. So for Leaky Black, been playing fantastic defensively. Offensively, has been attacking more, but obviously there's 4 guys that can kill you, and he's the one that won't kill you offensively. He hasn't hit a 3 in March, and it's hard, 0 for 1, 0 for 2 per game. But if Duke or whoever's leaving him open, if he can hit just 1, I think that opens up a lot for the team. But then it's really the guards. So RJ Davis had the fantastic game against Baylor, had the 12 assists against Marquette. But you look at say the tournament time, so ACC 2 games and where we're at now 4 games, he's only about 24% from 3, and that includes the 5 for 10 performance against Baylor. So outside of that game, he's definitely been struggling, and I think you've seen defenses try to key on him, especially this weekend, and try to get up under him a little bit more. And then finally, Caleb Love, he had a great game, obviously against UCLA. Bounced back from a subpar Baylor game, but if he can, what we saw this past weekend, if he can get to the rim and finish like he was doing, using the right angles and not fading away and getting a shot block, like that adds a whole nother dimension that we haven't really seen, just because he has shot poorly from the 2. He's been great from 3, but if he can get that going like he did, you remember at Cameron his freshman year, getting to the paint. If he can do that, I mean, those 3 players all have, they've been playing great, but all have that one more gear to go, I think.
I would challenge our listeners and viewers to go back and watch in the second half against UCLA when North Carolina started. We were really kind of going blow for blow with him. He had one situation where he crossed up from right to left, went to his left and made the layup with his right as his body was going left. That's an incredibly difficult shot to make. He did another one tonight against St. Peter's, which I think was in the first half when UNC had a stretch between the under 12 to the under 8 where they went plus 10. They went on 12-2 run, where he went baseline and went up with his right and finished with his left on the other side of the hoop. And I don't know that our listeners or the average viewer can grasp just how difficult and athletic those 2 plays are. But to your point, Sean, if he can continue to get to the rim in that fashion, he's shown that he has the ability to finish at an elite level.
And Joey,
yeah.
You made this point a couple of weeks ago. He's also among the career leaders in free throw percentage in UNC history. So for him, attacking the basket is the way to go. It's not, as Sean said, fading away, but jump into people. Seek that contact. There are guards who have been really great at seeking contact and get yourself to the free throw line. I mean, that's when you're 88, 89% of the free throw line, that's really good for your offense, really good for your team. So I think that bodes well for him.
I think back to the last couple of seasons where North Carolina fans were really infuriated by how poorly the team shot free throws, and now you've got the best free throw shooting team in the ACC, and they continue to do the same. Even when they've missed some clutch ones in tough situations in the tournament, they've still been able to overcome it because they've made more than they've missed, and that's really all you want to see. I want to stay with the guards here, guys. We saw a really phenomenal assist to basket ratio in the first weekend. They had 51 assists on 62 made field goals. Not as good this weekend. Sherrell, do you think that was more of a product of the types of defenses that they were playing against, and maybe the team just found other ways to win, or is there something more going on there?
Yeah, I think especially against UCLA, I think it's the style of defense that was played, and even excuse me, even tonight against St. Peter's, kind of the same deal, because the best shot for UNC tonight was really, I wouldn't say a missed shot was the best shot, but when you have Bacot, patrolling the lane like that, you maybe are a little more cavalier in your shot selection. When you're up 20, maybe you're a little more cavalier in moving the ball and that kind of stuff. So I think um, I think those are factors that need to be considered as well. In that UCLA played a style of defense that I think was specifically utilized to limit North Carolina's ball movement and to eliminate some of those open threes. And they just had to hit tough shots. And I think against St. Peter's, they got out to such a big lead so quickly that maybe stuff just wasn't as sharp as it should have been for the entire 40 minutes. So those that's part of it.
Yeah, I mean, to back up what I said with stats too, 51 of 62 last weekend, 26 to 52 this weekend. So
And
market difference.
And Marquette, I mean, just the way Marquette plays, you're gonna move the ball. And if you can move the ball, somebody's gonna be wide open, basically. So I do think it has a lot to do with the style of defense they saw.
Sean, we talked about a little bit about how much Brady Manek's passing can lead to confidence with this team. I think you may have led with that earlier this year, after a game where North Carolina just really looked really good offensively. I'm looking at stats from the game against St. Peter's. 19 points on 7-11 from the field. He hit 4 of 6 from 3, and 8 rebounds. Can you explain what a matchup problem he might be moving forward? Because we've seen, earlier in the season, he was a bit of a liability on defense, but now I've seen where he's getting a little more of a veteran, old head type defensive mentality about him. And he's become a bit of the nightmare. He's been able to hold his own on defense. And he's becoming a bit of a matchup nightmare for the Tar Heels.
Yeah, I mean, against UCLA, Hawkes missed his last nine shots, and it wasn't all on Manek, but he was able to move his feet. And once again, he's not going to jump out of the gym and block your shot, but with his height, he's been able to contest and make things difficult. But I think, what's his strength? That's offensively. And he's been, I think now we almost take it for granted of at what outside of the Virginia Tech game, I mean, at what a high level he's been playing at and shooting the ball. And I think, we can go back, maybe early January, mid-January, I think we were talking, and it might've been the UVA first game where that was almost seemed like the first time he had got it going. Because November, December, you can kind of go through this. I'm kind of looking through it now, but you see 1 3, 2 3. You saw him. You saw the ability. You just didn't see him just that uber confidence. And he was, I think, 35%. Now he's at 40% on the year. And I mean, anytime he lets it go, you think it's going in, let alone when he's wide open like he was that huge 3 against UCLA that put him up. So it really goes offensively, spreading the floor, being a sharp shooter. But I think when teams are looking at him, they say, all right, the 4 is going to have to guard him out on the perimeter, but just get up in him and, let him get a shot off. But now he's also such a threat, and he's been doing it for a while, but off the ball in terms of his movement, back cuts, and his ability to finish at the rim. I think, now I think we might have seen 1 or 2 misses around the rim, and you're surprised because he always gets to the spot he wants, and he gets there before the shot blocker or the defender can come over and really contest it.
You've been pointing out his ability to flash on these back cuts and baseline backdoor opportunities. I don't think that can be overstated as to how much of a dimension that adds to this offense, especially when you've got a guy like Bacot who can catch the ball in the high post, especially with a 4-out, one in offense, or when you've got guards who are driving to the basket. You've got a guy like Bacot cutting on the baseline. It just gives this team so much more depth and dimension into their offense. All right, Sherrell, you have done a great job of not being caught up in the moment. I know you're very diligent, not letting that happen, and not letting the present tense, get you to extreme hyperbole. But is there anybody that Brady Manek reminds you of when you think about this team versus some of the all-time Carolina tournament success teams? Who's the first person that comes to mind? Maybe you want to talk about.
Oh gosh.
I mean, there's a meatball right there on the tee for you if you want it, but I'm trying to avoid that.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay away from that one. He reminds me of just kind of the 3-4s, that have done well at UNC on championship high level teams, not necessarily in style of play, but just kind of what they contribute, which is a lot of savviness, a lot of just high basketball IQ plays.
Mm-hmm.
George Lynch was great in 1993.
My man. That's who I was thinking about. I wanted you to go there, but I didn't want to lead you. I am so thankful that's where you went, because you're exactly right. It's not style of play. It's what he brings to the team. Please continue.
Just high basketball IQ, an ability to rebound. Obviously, he's not anything close to the defender that George Lynch was, but George Lynch isn't anything close to the offensive player that Brady Manek was. But their ability to help settle things, their ability, like I said, to move the ball. George Lynch was a phenomenal passer, playing the 4 most of the year, which I think people always thought that Carolina played 2 bigs, but George Lynch was the 4 for the 1993 team. Excuse me. So I think they have those similarities. Even, if you look at the 2005 team, he brings a lot of the things that Jawad Williams brought to that team at the 4 as well, which is timely shooting, good ball movement, and then sometimes knowing, excuse me, when to get out of the way, frankly. There are times when it's like Bacot needs the space and he will just, flare out to the corner, wait his turn. And then to your point, Sean, your point, Joey, Leaky has done a great job of finding him usually once per game on those back cuts for dunks or layups. So I just think of George Lynch as patrolling the baseline.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I think about him, that's where I go, catching lobs,
hovering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Manek does that, but in a very 2022 way, which is, hitting threes from the corner, picking pops and that kind of thing. So yeah, again, I'm not saying he plays like George Lynch, but what he brings to the team, I think is actually pretty similar.
We are absolutely wavelengthing. We are vibing, as the kids say right now, because that's who I thought about when I threw you the question. But I absolutely agree. It's not a style of play as much as it is a contribution. Because if you will think, George Lynch was always considered the locker room leader of that team. And I think going back to what Brady Manek said after the Tennessee game, I think it was the Tennessee game, where he kind of asserted himself as this is not what I came here for, leader of this team. I think there are great similarities there. All right, guys, I'm going to do something I've never done here on this show before. So go with me here. Big weekend. We're going to go a little off script here. And we're going to riff. Sean, I've run out of things that I want to talk about. I'm going to let you drive a little bit. Where are some things that you feel like we really need to hit home in order to make sure we've covered all our bases on this particular weekend on this episode of the Coast to Coast?
Great question. I would go to the bench. We haven't really talked about, once again, the bench isn't getting a lot of playing time, but last week it was Dontrez that came up huge. This week, Dontrez played a little bit early in UCLA, but then, we kind of talked about it last week. Puff might be the better fit against the UCLA team. And, he was going, Juzang or Hawkwez, they put him on, and all of a sudden, not as good as Leaky, but he was pretty dang good guarding those guys. And then he played again today. And once again, if there's foul trouble or you need a rest, can kind of Puff or Dontrez come in next week and kind of keep that high level of play going. So I would say the bench, not getting a lot of playing time, but any minute will be a crucial minute going forward. So that's something that, I think is important to chat about.
Yeah, man. Thanks for bringing that up. And for the film junkies who listen to the show, go back. There was a part at about 8:10 or 8:15 left in the second half. Puff Johnson got caught. Well, he didn't get caught. He was assigned man on man against I think it was Hawkwez or Juzang at one point. Just got right up in his chest. Got him to a challenge jumper from, I don't know, 8 to 10 feet out. The jumper was missed, and then Puff gets the rebound and gets fouled on the rebound. And that's just, again, that's just really impressive defense when you think about a player who has not played a lot, who has been called on sporadically, but has been thrust into very important situations. Sean, I think that kind of encapsulates the point you were going to. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Sherrell, I'm going to give you the same opportunity. What is something that you feel like just really jumped off the screen at you this past weekend, whether it be Friday night's game, the game against St. Peter's, or both, that you feel like is just a must discuss point for this show?
I'm going to cheat a little bit, but I'm going to go Baylor, beating Baylor and UCLA back to back. I think kind of gets lost in the noise because they're in the Final Four now. Well, those are two really good, really experienced, really disciplined teams. And I think a big rap on North Carolina this year was that it wasn't disciplined for a lot of time. That if you just waited a little bit, they would make a mistake physically, by turning the ball over, or taking a bad shot, or mentally by forgetting to switch, or forgetting what defense or whatever. And to go toe to toe with them, to blow Baylor out for part of the game and then survive, and then to always kind of feel like they were on the ropes. It almost feel like one more shot for UCLA, maybe 5 or 6 times, and then the game would have been over.
Mm-hmm.
To just hang on and to beat them, that is not that team. That UCLA team is really good, and they reminded me somewhat of the UNC 2016 team.
Yeah.
In that, North Carolina lost Marcus Page and Bryce Johnson for sure, so huge pieces, but they brought a lot of people back, and it was the whole time it was redemption tour. That's all it was: redemption, redemption, redemption. And UCLA kind of had a similar feel once Juzang announced that he was coming back. They kind of got the crew back together. They added a really good transfer in Miles Johnson, which I think Mick Cronin is probably hitting himself for not playing him more. On Friday, there were some coaching decisions by Mick Cronin. I'm like, man, you're kind of handicapping yourself. But they had that vibe, and it felt like a little bit like they were just waiting for the postseason so they could turn it on. And they gave North Carolina a couple of combos that probably earlier in the season would have knocked them out, but UNC held on. So I think just the mental toughness to beat Baylor the way they did, to come back against UCLA, and then to resist the temptation to look forward past St. Peter's. I think all three of those things are huge storylines that should be highlighted, because even I would say past UNC teams wouldn't, but even this team, maybe a couple months ago, would have looked at St. Peter's and been like, "Oh, we're good, we got them." And that's how you lose to a Pittsburgh at home.
I was gonna say, this team got caught slipping looking past Pittsburgh. So
right. So you see the growth, and you see the growth not just over the season, but really over the course of the tournament.
When you mentioned that UCLA team getting the band back together, I said on Twitter during the game, I know it's easy to say now because North Carolina beat them, but that was an incredibly disciplined UCLA squad, a very veteran UCLA squad that, as you mentioned, were majority all guys that they brought back from the year before who made a deep run into the Final Four. And going back to something we said last week about the toughness of this team, right? Like, you saw a North Carolina team go against one of the most disciplined squads that I've seen in quite some time. Maybe a Jay Wright full strength Villanova team is the exception, but you saw a North Carolina team go up against one of the most disciplined squads they've seen and make UCLA blank, which is just not something I think anybody would have suspected, much less in the middle of this run, but prior to this season. Guys, last shot before we get out of here. Sean, anything else we need to talk about before we put a bow on this here show?
A few quick things. The power of the three. I mean, once again, UNC has been shooting, especially the improvement from the last 2 years, but you keep hanging around, and then 2 threes in a row against UCLA, or even at Duke down, what was it, 8 or 9 going into the half, and all of a sudden 2 threes and they're right back in it. So that's one thing. We started the show talking about defense. I wish I had kind of a chart of how UNC's been ranked defensively in KenPom, but At one point they were sub one, they were like 101 in the 80s for the most part. They're number 39 right now. So definitely a big improvement. And then staying on defensively, Armando Bacot, there was 2 possessions, second half of UCLA, where he got switched on to Tyre Campbell and then switched on to Hawkwez. He stayed with both of them, blocked Hawkwez's shot.
Emphatically.
Emphatically. And I believe he made Tiger turn the ball over, staying with him in that one. And that was something I didn't fully catch when I was first watching it, but to have that ability, I think shows a lot. So those are my items as we wrap it up.
Your final 2 cents. All right, Sherrell, I will afford you the same opportunity as we did a few minutes ago. Again, you take as much line as you want to take. These shows don't come around often, and I want to say before we let you get off, and I hope this isn't what you were going to, but folks who are listening to this show, enjoy this show, enjoy this season, enjoy what's happening right now, because it doesn't happen all the time. Sherrell, go ahead, man.
Yeah, mine is not basketball analysis. It's more about feelings and what North Carolina basketball, why it means so much to so many. So I would say joy in this situation is greater than dread. And just remember what it took for UNC to get here. I realize what is on the horizon for them, and I realize there's kind of an impending doom almost. It seems to be coming over Durham County and Orange County. But to Joy's point, cherish these moments. So a few friends of mine have had some big lifetime issues recently, some deaths in the family. My friend Brandon Dees, his dad, Donnie, passed away in January. My really good friend, Michael Tompkins, lost his father, John Tompkins, this past week. And then my buddy, Jimmy Leak, his dad is fighting some things medically. And those 3 guys, what they have in common is that I think probably their favorite thing to do with their dad is to watch Carolina basketball. Mm-hmm. And so I would just urge everyone to live in the moment and remember that, tomorrow's not promised, and just enjoy it. These are the memories. You're creating the memories that you're going to enjoy, in 5, 10, 15 years now. So that would be my message to Carolina fans. It's because those 3 guys, they would love to talk to their dad, or 2 of them would love to talk to their dad right now, and they can't. And they're going to look back at some of the memories they had in previous Carolina seasons or games for comfort. And so just remember that, you have that now. You have that opportunity. So take advantage of it and enjoy it and don't dread, because no matter what happens, this has been a phenomenal season for Hubert Davis. He's got arguably the best regular season win in UNC history, and he just led his team to the Final Four. So that would be my message to the Carolina fan base is enjoy it, because you just don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, we definitely want to offer our best to those 3 guys. 2 of them I know and are big time listeners of this show and are big fans of Inside Carolina. So sending up the best for those guys. And like Sherrell said, he said it really well, and I'll add on to that. Hey, my parents have been married 45 years, and the game that's coming up next weekend might cause them to get divorced. So, these things never happen often. I mean, this is the first time it's ever happened in history. So rather than shying away from it, embrace it and look the opportunity for what it is. They rarely happen. Final Fours rarely happen. And like you said, Sherrell, there are memories to be made. As you're listening to this show, maybe you're sharing this show with somebody you care about, or maybe you're discussing this show with somebody you care about. We're honored to be in that discussion, but take these things for what they're worth, and don't let that pass you by. And that's a great place to end this show. I appreciate you guys bringing it. I appreciate Sherrell. I mean, look, I'm going to stop before we pass the hat, because I started the show with some gospel. If we need to get a praise break going on in here to get out today, I don't mind, right? Like if the Holy Ghost should capture this show, then so be it. Not a guy to speak in tongues, but things happen. It's been a heck of a ride. So we will allow that to carry us out today. For Sean Moran, for Sherrell McMillan, big shout out to Johnny T-Shirt. Make sure you check them out. Shout out to John Siegley for producing. Remember, Inside Carolina is going to cover this Final Four like nobody you've ever seen. Nobody should even try to attempt. Everybody else should just, get off the sticks, head home and watch. Go home, be a family man, because Inside Carolina is going to cover this Final Four better than anybody. You know where to find your content. Subscribe, rate, review. We appreciate you being here. Appreciate you listening. Stay tuned for more stuff throughout the week. But as I said, for Sean Moran, for Sherrell McMillan, I'm Joey Powell. This has been the Coast to Coast podcast following a North Carolina Final Four trip to New Orleans. Go figure. Late.